Welcome to Side 3 of this special career track presentation, Assertive Communication Skills. In this part of the program, Carol Price will examine common misconceptions about communication. You'll learn why even the simplest ideas have trouble being communicated from one person to another because of the concepts called encoding and decoding. You'll also learn how to ensure that your message gets across every time. Once again, here is Carol Price.
One of the things that keeps us from being assertive is unclear communication. And we're going to find out why a process that is theoretically so simple can break down so very, very easily.
Well, now that you've finally got it right, I want you to be my team on this project.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
This project is very important to me personally and to the company.
Very important to the company, sir. We're very hard.
And therefore, it is supremely important to you.
Oh, yes.
Very important to us.
Yes,
Very, very important.
Are there any questions?
No, sir. I think we can
I
handle
think
this.
everything we need is right in here.
And it goes without saying, all printed material on this project will be green.
Green. Good, sir.
It's
Very
green.
good. Jot that down.
I'd like
Green.
to know. Great idea.
All right.
Now get busy.
We'll get right on
Right
it.
away. Right now.
Bye,
Thank
Mr.
you, sir. Ooh, green.
So it's green.
Well, I guess that makes it easy for you guys in creative.
Not exactly. Do you know how many different shades of green there are?
No, I don't think that's what Mr. Ratner is saying. I think what he means is that he wants the packaging environmentally friendly. You know, green, the earth.
I guess that's possible. I mean, after all, I heard Mr. Ratner's a vegetarian. He goes to their meetings all the time.
Not a vegetarian. He's a Rotarian. There's a difference, Tom.
Besides, I think what Mr. Ratner was saying is that he wants this project to be green. You know, to grow, to be full of life, nurturing and sustaining.
He's talking about the color green.
No, he's talking about
People, listen up. Did I say green?
Yeah,
I wrote it down.
Right away.
I meant blue.
Great.
Even more.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, you have a lot on your mind, sir.
Back to work.
Yes, sir.
See, he's talking about the color blue.
I think he just means that he wants it somber and serious. You know, blue can be a color switch for depression. It could be the oceans and the waters of the earth.
But it's not green. That
No.
much we know, right?
It is
You
not
got it.
green.
Green, it's blue.
So, which of the four subordinates did understand Mr. Ratner? None of them. None of them. The sender of any message encodes that message based on his or her intent and previous experience. Encoding means the delivery in style and content that is comfortable for him or her, or at least typical in their experience. For example, if everyone in your family screamed during dinner, then it's usual to hear screaming. If you do it at lunch, it seems like the normal or right thing to do. However, in any message, there's also a receiver. That receiver must decode or interpret that message based on his or her previous experience. Your decoding process, as the receiver of information, is influenced by your experience, just as is the sender's encoding, which is influenced by their experience. If you hear or view a message coming through your memory banks, meaning your experience, and it doesn't fit your norm, then you will find it difficult at best to understand the true intent of the sender. In all likelihood, you will not understand the true intent. If the experience bases are different, the message can easily be misinterpreted. If yelling at dinner was to be feared, you could easily be fearful when your boss yells. And that fear could and often does block your ability to hear that true message because you're too busy reacting to the decoded delivery. When Mr. Ratner encoded, he used his own coding system. Because all four subordinates decoded quite differently, what's the likelihood that the finished product will be the intended result Mr. Ratner had in mind. And in fact, what green was Ratner talking about? Any idea? Was it the color? Any idea? Was it environmentally friendly? Any idea? In other words, we don't have a clue, nor did they, because messages are interpreted by the receiver. The sender's intent may be radically different from how the message is interpreted. This means the sender cannot control the outcome of the message. However, by using assertiveness techniques, the sender can increase the chance of intent-outcome congruence. So, who is responsible for matching intent to outcome? And more importantly, who's going to take the heat if they don't match? The sender or the receiver? Which? The receiver. Most of us have assertive intent, but our behavior does not always allow intent to match outcomes. In other words, we use non-assertive behavior and we don't get the outcome that we want. The purpose throughout this program is learning to match intention and outcome through assertiveness techniques, which do allow maximum success in all endeavors. There are some other things that keep us from being assertive. Some of these are in our heads, and some come from what we perceive as societal norms. Let's look first at the personal blocks. The first block is called tunnel training. Please turn to page 12 of your workbook. Our upbringing conditions us to behave in certain patterns. We rarely venture outside the tunnel. In fact, we are often not aware that any other options are available. As an example, I'm going to give you a test. I'm giving you a series of numbers, and your job in this test is to find the pattern in the series. And let me give you some other information here. The numbers are 0 through 9. They are in a specific order that represents the pattern. A pattern means if we stopped this series at any point, because of the pattern, you would know what number came next. I want you to take approximately 30 seconds to see if you can find the pattern. Stop the tape, give yourself 30 seconds, and when you have finished, start the tape again. How many of you found the pattern in this series? And as I look out on the group here, none of you found it. And you didn't find it because you are so stuck in your tunnels that you've been taught how to think. In teaching first grade, I had 6-year-olds that I had to keep thinking a certain way. If they drew a picture and they made purple grass, I had to correct them so their grass was the right color. And if you didn't find this pattern, it's for the exact same reason. In looking at this example, many of you began with an odd even, and that worked for a couple of numbers, and then it kind of just didn't work when you got to the 9 and the 1. Some of you began to add 2, subtract 3, and that didn't work as you got a little bit further as well. And some of you actually said to yourselves, there isn't a pattern, this is a trick. Well, there is a pattern. And in fact, the pattern is far simpler than anything that you looked at. Every one of those numbers in this pattern is listed in alphabetical order. But your tunnel kept you from thinking of these digits as words. Now, the truth is, how many of you write checks? Sure. So that means you do write numbers on occasion in word form. But because you saw these as digits, you didn't even think to look at them any other way. That's one of the major reasons that assertive behavior is difficult. We don't even look at it because it's not part of our tunnel. In teaching us our options, in learning our options, they become limited. We don't see numerals because we didn't think in that tunnel, even though you have written that word 8 thousands and thousands of times. Now, can you see how difficult it is to break out of those tunnels? And I want you to stop the tape right now and list 5 groupings that you belong to that have influenced who you are and what your tunnels are all about. Take a couple of minutes and list your 5 groupings. When you've completed that list, start your tape again. Give me some of the tunnels that you identified and, in fact, wrote in your workbook. Let's start with 1. Carmen?
Daughter, son.
Depending on gender, and you certainly have had certain teachings to make you that daughter or that son. Good for you. How about another? Reba?
Mother.
A mother, indeed so. And we get all kinds of messages that tell us how to be a mother, again, depending on gender, or a father. These tunnels are very important, and you hit on some very common and effective ones. We think like the people we are like, in gender, in age, and in nationality. The facts are, we are biased. Even when we think we're evaluating all our options, we rarely are. The second block that speaks to these options is called pleaser behaviors. We believe we have the power to make other people happy, or angry, or sad. We think we're responsible for the happiness of others. This causes unassertive behavior. In addition, those people around us who see our need or desire to please may choose to feed into that need. They talk to us as the group members that we just saw. A good junior partner would act a certain way. A caring son or daughter should come home for the holidays. A dedicated team member better demonstrate. And as we hear those behaviors or thought patterns, we continue the behavior or thinking that keeps us from challenging the need to please, or even from challenging the notion that we are capable of pleasing anyone else. The third set of blocks is a societal expectation and stereotypical messages, and that goes into one that restrains us from behaving assertively. We've looked at tunnels such as age, gender, and culture. Can you think of any other unrealistic messages or expectations or pressures that you received from your family or your friends or your peers or the media, such as body image? How are we supposed to look in terms of body image? As women, how are we supposed to look?
Gorgeous.
Thin, tall, gorgeous, blonde, sure. How about the car that you drive? Fast car, you bet. Low to the ground, hearing a growl as it goes, you betcha. Or what soft drink you buy that's going to make you taller, thinner, and certainly, without a doubt, more attractive. Although these tunnels can seem amusing, the ones we've talked about, the truth is there are a lot of tunnels that we are equally as unaware of that can cause us great harm. Example would be that we now in our country have the highest number of little girls under the age of 8 with anorexia than we have ever had, and that we are now dealing with an incredible number of people getting into cars, driving while intoxicated, and killing themselves and other people. The point that I'm making is if we don't examine these tunnels for what they really are, we will never have a chance of breaking out from them. In breaking out of those tunnels, we have 3 steps that we must be aware of and then choose to do. The first is deciding if we really like the life we're living. Are we comfortable? Do we want to continue along the same pattern? If the answer is no, and even if it's just one little no in one aspect, we need to move to the second step. And the second step, very simply, is to begin listening. Actually, really listening to our internal dialogue. When I hear myself say, I can't do that, I can't stand up to him, I can't go in that room, I don't know anybody. When we hear those words, they become barriers to our ability to make movement. Once I've decided I can hear and don't like what I'm hearing, then and only then can you go to the third step. The third step, logically, is when we begin to implement the techniques, such as we're learning here today, to take back your rights. And as soon as you begin to take them back, you allow yourself to live more comfortably. Only you can decide how far you're willing to go to reclaim your rights. The easiest route in reclaiming them is through assertive techniques. John.
If our tunnels are so well established at home and at work and in the media, what chance do we really have of breaking out of them?
If I recognize that I want to choose to change that tunnel, part of the danger is that the people in the tunnel who have responded to me in that set way for 3 years or 15 years or 44 years in the case of a parent, depending on your age, as I choose to move out of the tunnel, I'm in some danger. And the danger is they may not like me as much if I don't remain their victim. So the first goal is to decide if I don't like the tunnel anymore, if it's not serving me well. And once I decide I don't like the tunnel, the second issue we have to grapple with is, am I willing to take the consequences of coming out of that tunnel? And that means having, if it were you and I, John, you respond to me for me, not respond to the relationship we have established, which may be not in my best interest. And the third piece of that is, if you respond to me not in my best interest, I need to understand that and decide if it's worth continuing. The point that I want to make by exposing these blocks is to clearly show that because of who we are, who we were taught to be, our choices, our options are often self-limited. Our goal is then to break out of this self-limiting behavior, to embrace new ways of thinking and go beyond the blocks that are in our paths. So the next time that you find yourself reluctant to use behavior that is not comfortable for you, you need to ask yourself, am I responding to facts or to tunnel training? The answer may very well surprise you. So in this segment, we've discussed some of the things that hold you back, the personal blocks to assertiveness, poor communications, and the societal blocks to assertiveness. In the next segment, we'll talk about the cornerstone of your foundation for overcoming these blocks and becoming more assertive. That cornerstone is picking which battles are worthwhile and planning how to fight them. My grandma used to say to me that a good run is often better than a bad stand. And that simply means that it's up to me to decide if the benefits of fighting the battle outweigh the potential negative consequences. One of the great things about being assertive is that you can choose which battles to fight and which battles to walk away from. Consider the following. For every battle that may be worth fighting, you must assess the risk before entering the fight, because some battles have too high a price, and others you simply cannot win. That's one of the major differences between being assertive and being aggressive. The aggressive person believes that they have to fight and win every battle, regardless of the cost to themselves or to others. We see minor traffic mishaps become fistfights with no benefit to either party and often greater punishment to everyone. In contrast, that passive person will go to almost any length to avoid a battle, even if the price they pay for that avoidance is far greater than the potential risk of confrontation. In the last 15 years, thousands of people have quit jobs rather than confront the learning of a new skill, and obviously that being computer literacy, because they're afraid they just can't master it. So it isn't always worth it to fight every battle. Sometimes the assertive choice is to actually not assert yourself. You must weigh numerous factors. This means that assertion, especially for those working to overcome a tendency to behave passively, may sometimes need to be a planned process. In assessing the risk, consider the following. The first is safety. Is there really a safety risk? If so, assertion may not be wise. For instance, if you're dealing with an aggressive person and you think he or she may physically attack you, it's better not to assert yourself at that moment. If there's physical danger, technique or not, make yourself safe. The second is security. And there are two security risks that we have to take into account. The first is money. If I stand up to my boss, will I lose my job? If so, it may not be worth it. But is it true? What's the history of firings in your organization? Have people really been fired because they stood up to the boss? If the answer is yes, the risk is real. If the answer is no, the risk may need to be examined further. That second security risk is self-approval. On the other hand, can I live with myself if I don't deal with the problem? How long will I beat myself up about it? Will I have self-respect? And equally important, will I ever be willing to take a risk again? Once you have decided to take that risk, ask yourself the following 5 questions. First question, what is my gut goal? In other words, what do I want? Once that's decided, question number 2, what do I gain by continuing the same behavioral response? Will that other person miraculously change? If they have been a jerk for 7 years, why would they change now unless I change my response to them? Question number 3, can I give up what I need to get what I want? In other words, can I leave my tunnel? And number 4, what is the worst that can happen if I take this risk? Do I have a fallback plan? And question number 5, which behavior moves me towards my gut goal that I've already identified in question 1? When you plan to assert yourself in a situation which is important to you, it helps to consciously analyze the communication in advance and plan what you want to say and what you want to do. Now turn to page 14 in your workbook and fill in the first 6 lines of information. Use a confrontation that you may have been avoiding or one that you recently had where you wish you could have changed the results. Pause the tape, and when you're finished, we will continue.
We wanted you to handle it. Elizabeth, from the beginning, it was your game plan that we were following.
I know that, sir, and that's why we decided not...
It wasn't a we. Don't say we. And it wasn't an I. It was a you. You thought of it, you did it, now you're going to pay for it. It's the price of command.
But the time factor you approved...
Don't make excuses. You could have done it the way we've always done it. New thinking is not what has made this company great. But no, you had to do it your way. And what did you end up with? The greatest disaster in the history of the free world.
You just saw Elizabeth getting the blame for the greatest error in the history of mankind. How do you think she feels right about now? What do you think? Stupid? Good word, yeah. What else? Angry, sure. Another? Resentful? Perhaps did a lot of work and now is not getting any credit for it? What else?
This isn't working.
Humiliated, yeah. What else? How about frightened? Now what's going to happen? Does she agree? Did she appear to agree with the assessment she was just given? No, not at all. how do you think Mr. Ratner feels at this very moment?
Powerful.
In control.
In control, you bet. What else do you think?
Supreme?
Yeah. Will any of the emotions we just heard solve this problem? Of course not. There is a process, however, and that process will allow you to prepare to deal with making the greatest errors in the history of mankind, or maybe even, in our case, only the second greatest errors we will find in mankind. And that process is called the acid process. It has 4 steps. It is an internal process, and all 4 steps of the process are interrelated.
This is the end of Side 3 of Career Track's special presentation of assertive communication skills with Carol Price. Please turn this tape over to continue with the program.